All right, everybody. Let's us begin. Oh, look at that. We have the speakers working in here as well. Welcome to Northampton Reparations Study Commission. I believe we have all the commissioners in person. One is coming over from another meeting. The sign-in sheet is over there if you want to make public comment. And let's get rolling. As we sort of come to our work, we'll have our grounding, but also I just want to just say at the beginning that, how excited we are for the enthusiasm of this city. And we're looking forward to that same enthusiasm moving forward. We're looking forward to that to see, all these different meetings that come up. And let's just remember, let our passions continue to guide us, but at the same time, let's keep them contained so we keep our decorum right. We keep ourselves together so we can debate passionately, but with respect for each other. So I just want to make sure we say at the outset. But let's call roll. William Newman here. Felicia Lundquist. Is Felicia on there? Don't see Felicia on there. Garrick Perry here. Jeremy here. Marissa Elkins is on her way over. Marsha Morris. Lucian Power Green here. Renika Montgomery Tumaclay
here.
Jasmine Goodspeed
Here.
Emican Sudan
Here.
All right. Like I said, I think, let's see. I can't read that. That's not Felicia now.
No.
Okay. No problem. First, let's approve the minutes. Anyone have any change in the minutes from last meeting? Anyone? I can't really see you two down there. So, okay. No, it's all good. All right. Motion to accept the minutes. So make a motion.
Make a motion to accept.
All right. Let's vote. Second the motion. There you go. You second it?
I will second.
Thank you. All right. Bill Newman. Felicia's not here. Garrick.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yes.
Marissa's not here. Marsha. Usman, yes. Bernika.
Yeah.
All right. Jasmine.
Yes.
Perfect. And Imakan.
Yes.
All right. Get things started. First up is a grounding that I assume you're going to do since.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good PM. Let's all take a moment to close our eyes and put our feet on the ground. Just both feet. Taking a deep breath in through the nose, filling your body with that air. And letting your breath out. Breathing in once more. Breathing out. One more time. And out. And keeping your eyes closed. Imagining from your feet vines or roots growing into the ground. Imagine you are whatever tree your ancestors planted. Imagine your ancestors tending to the roots, watching you grow, smiling at you. Ground yourself with them. Ground yourself in knowing that you are everything that they dreamed they would be. Opening your eyes, look around the room. Look at your neighbor, left and right, and all around you. You are in community with these people. Either you live in the same town, or you share a love for this town. These are your people. We are all here today for the same purpose. Taking one last deep breath and letting out anything you are holding. Thank you.
Right. let's move to public comment. And is there a microphone on that side for public comment? Okay.
Have them on.
Over here. Hmm.
So actually, if anyone, this side.
Who's up first on the list? Who's up first on the list? Oh, I have a list right here. Okay. So I'm like looking over there. All right. First person up, Mando. Mando. Welcome, Mando.
I'll sit. Thank you. I love a member of the local community. Reparations is a very sensitive issue for a lot of people. So I'll use Star Wars as an analogy because that's really near and dear to my heart. Star Wars is really about hope and unity, people coming together, and not just humans, but different aliens and even, droids on unnatural life, right? But that's really just a story coming together to defeat an evil empire. There are parallels between Star Wars and our own history. Throughout history, various groups of people have been oppressed, abused, manipulated, lied to. Indigenous Native Americans, slaughtered, raped for their land when white Westerners came here. After that, tribes of Africa were enslaved, sent over in ships, forced to work horrific conditions. It got so bad we fought a war over it. You have to realize most civilized nations were able to end slavery because they realized it was morally wrong. America is the only nation that had to fight a war for it. Even after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation freeing the slaves, the oppression in our country did not end there. After that, Polish, Irish, Japanese citizens were all ostracized and cast out because of who they were, right? And while those are a history lesson before anybody in this room was born, there's parallels to today's world. All you have to do is look at the Israel-Gaza conflict or what's going on in LA right now to see that more can be done from everyone, right? It's difficult, right? It's a difficult, changing world, and we all need to do better. We all need to improve, everybody. I think, it's unfortunate that we all can't be as good as people in Star Wars stories. But again, those are just stories. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak. It was kind of a broad statement about American history in general, but oppression is something that affects everybody throughout the world. Thank you.
Right. Next up, Amkar Shabazz.
No,
You can go from here, yeah.
Push the, hold it.
It's already.
All right, thank you. Dear members of the Northampton Reparations Commission, I'm following up on my appearance before you last month. And I want to speak from this written expression of my thoughts about where you are in the process of completing a report for the mayor and council of the city of Northampton. These suggestions arise from both my experience of serving on the town of Amherst, equivalent to your commission. I also speak from my activism nationally and my involvement in this work since the summer of 1980. First of all, I want to speak from my position as the W.E.B. Du Bois Professor of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where we are engaged in research and publishing related to the historical and present conditions of people of African descent here in Western Massachusetts and beyond. Both my department, as well as the Slavery North Project and the UMass History Department, are all engaged in research that deeply support the work that has been going on here with this commission, with ours in Amherst. And we look at the problem of slavery and the impact it continues to have on people in municipalities like Amherst and Northampton and otherwise. Specifically, I want to endorse the request that was made to use funds to support the continued research. I think it was by a UMass student that has been working for the commission. The work that this person can complete with this additional support should be of great interest to the city, as well as for those of us in the research community. I'm personally willing to do all that I can to help support this student and do hope that the request made by one of the commissioners will be addressed at this meeting. Secondly, I want to encourage you to include in your report a recommendation along the lines of what we did in Amherst to support ongoing reparative justice efforts. We set up a reparations stabilization fund, and annually monies are put into this account that draw interest. We haven't worked out all the details of what to spend it on, how to spend it. That is to come. But at least you make the commitment to creating such a fund, okay, that is held in reserve, can begin to operate as a kind of an endowment for the future activities. Many of them you have spelled out in your report, such as scholarships and other kinds of funding. So you need then to have a specific recommendation about a kind of funding model that your council can then begin to act upon. Thirdly, and I will say in a little more detail, ours was 2 million was the figure we have initially set. Funds have been taken each year out of certified free cash. So whatever surplus there was at the end of the fiscal year, once all bills and it's certified, everything has been taken care of, then what remains is as certified free cash. A portion of that is taken and put in the reparations fund. It was roughly shadowing what we collected that year in cannabis tax revenue, but we're really trying now to think beyond that toward accelerating the effort to complete that $2 million endowment. This stands as then a kind of model of what other municipalities are beginning to do. I was recently blown away with the city of Tulsa that they set for themselves an ambitious goal of 105 million to go toward victims of the racial massacre of 1921 and more broadly in terms of reparative justice efforts in Tulsa for people of African descent. Thirdly, I encourage you to send a delegation from the city to the next summit of state and local reparations advocates that meet in Evanston, Illinois in December. Myself and Kathleen Anderson and others from the Amherst community, including former Councilor Michelle Miller, have gone in each year now. It's going into its 5th year, I believe, this coming December. And you will meet there activists, leaders from all over the country. Tulsa, in fact, last December sent a huge delegation. It included members of their council, their mayor. It included many grassroots activists for reparations. And I will say as well, Kathleen will remind me to say this, that First Repair, the organization that sponsors it, for those who are eligible, recognized persons eligible for reparation, they do assist with your travel. Okay, so persons of African descent my room was paid for example, my airfare was paid for. So they do assist with people who from the community of harm to be able to go. So I really encourage you all to look at that. That's coming up this coming December. Particularly if your mayor could come. The mayor of Evanston, who addresses the body every year, is really brilliant, articulate, and passionate in his commitment to the reparative justice process in Evanston, Illinois. And he is not a person of African descent, by the way. So I think your mayor could really benefit from talking with the mayor of Evanston. Finally, Amherst, it is an opportunity to interact with other advocates to learn about how this work is taking place in other places all over the country and to access expertise from legal to financial to grassroots organizing all across the board. Robin Ruth Simmons, by the way, is the head of First Repair and really encourage you all to connect. Fourth, that's all that I'm remembering right now to specifically try to address, and I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Sure. Let's go to someone on Zoom. Marithia.
Hi, my name is Maritha Wallace, and I am an ESP, a paraprofessional at JFK Middle School. And I just wanted to say that this is a really important issue. And I'm going to speak on it as from the educator standpoint, as one of the 3 or 4 Black people that work at JFK. And as of right now, we have no educator of color that teaches general education classes. So I think as we look to how we can have reparations around what has happened in the United States around the area of slavery, that education and how we inform our youngest learners to see nobody that's reflected like them in at least JFK part that is teaching a class, math, science, social studies, English of color. And so when I look at this and I look at reparations, it, for me, as a person who is not wealthy, would look like, we're going to help you get your education so that you can come back and teach in the school system where we have denied many people of color the access to work in the school system at JFK. When I started to work at JFK, I was the only Black person in that building. So again, when I talk about reparations, I think that we need to check in with the educational system. What's being taught there? How can we repair that? Because I can tell you, as someone who works there, we have many different forms of discrimination, from anti-Semitism to straight up racism to all of it. And not having somebody reflect in that part is very difficult. So my part of looking at reparations is, how can we enhance our educational system? And part of that is to look at people like myself who are not financially able to jump in and like pay all of this money, so that we can have a path to our to teach where we're planted. As I've always been saying, bloom where you're planted. I've been at JFK for 10 years. So there's a couple of things. Also, reparations might look like, how do we, in the educational system, talk to our students of color? Who do we bring in to speak directly to our to our curriculum? This is reparations as well. It's part of that money that Amalcar talked about that should be used in the city. I would suggest that in our current budget crisis, that we look and label that specifically so that it can be used for no other cause but for reparations, and what that would look like in some kind of founding areas. What that would, education, we're going to do it this way. We're going to open businesses for people of color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would continue in this I would ask that you would continue in this important work on many, many levels. From our government, I think it would be great for Mayor Sciarra to go to some of these things. However, maybe some pre-education might help on that respect. I also think that as we go through the process of this, that we encourage difficult conversations with the community, because I think that people say slavery happened in the past, we should be over it now. But technically, in the United States of America, you have your Asian, Chinese Americans and Japanese Americans that did get reparations. Not enough, in my opinion. You have your indigenous people who have gotten some reparations, and definitely not enough. But we are, as Black people, still fighting to get what we were promised, 40 acres and a mule, back in the day, which we still haven't been given. So I would just ask that this commission stays firm and keep pushing, because you're going to come up with a lot of resistance. So I would encourage that you set up a budget with a line item, so it can't be used for something else and not put into just free cash that anybody can take. That you have specific reasons and specific categories where this money can be used, whatever that looks like. So thank you very much for your time. And it is good to see everyone. Have a blessed day.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to paper. And I think there's one other person online, but shall we return to Judy Wish? We're at about 14 minutes, so just to let everyone know, keep it moving. So Judy, you want to go next?
Yeah.
Oh, you're behind me. I'm looking up there. Okay.
Hello. Hi, I'm Judy Wish. I'm a member of the Congregation B'nai Israel Reparations Working Group. And Congregation B'nai Israel is also part of the Northampton Interfaith Reparations Roundtable. Oh, and I was on the fence about whether to share, because I wanted to say this is sort of feedback after the end of the last meeting, but I know that I don't get to share unless I say something here. And my questions are about the process of this reparations commission. And I know that there's different opinions of where it goes from here. Is this the end? Is this the report? Is this the end? Or do we need to continue? And my question is it a question of time? Is it a question, would more time resolve the things that people think need to get done? Is it a time thing? Is it a resources that are needed? Is it a reconfigured or grown group of folks that are investing their time? If I see that the question is, are we going to continue or stop? I think that's a really simple question, but what is it? Why is the why, and what can we do so that we get to a place where I love what has been said about having financial commitments and direction, and how do we do that? Maybe you don't. Maybe that's a second stage that we haven't reached yet, but we just agree to that and accept what has been written, but say, and now there's stage 2 that's coming up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let's do one more in person. We'll go on back online. I see one hand raised online. So Maureen up. Is it Bowker?
Hi, my name is Maureen. I'm a resident of the city. I was born in this city. And this is my first meeting here, so I'm a little nervous talking in front of people. But I have to say I got tweaked a little bit, and it was from articles in the Gazette. That's my knowledge of this group. So I apologize if the tone is in a wrong direction. But and as a former banker who did mortgages, I was really bothered by Mr. Newman. You kind of implied about the racist covenants in a lot of people's mortgage deeds in the area, and that it was kind of to blame on the institutions. And you went off to list a number of banks in the area. And from what I read, I know that you asked people, I think here at a meeting or at your other place of meetings, how many people read their deeds, and people admitted they didn't read their deeds. And I, as a banker, was kind of offended because there was kind of some racist implications. So we bankers are certainly going to do any mortgage we can for anybody, because that's how we make money. And I'm retired now, and I'm not here associated with any bank. So I want to ask the same people at your mortgage closings, who had a banker at your mortgage closing? And my guess is the answer is nobody did, because bankers don't go to the closings. We don't make any money at closings. We don't get paid to do your mortgages. Banks give you money to do the mortgage. So I believe you pay an attorney to sit down at the closing table with you to review documents. And it is my understanding that none of these covenants, nobody acted on them. And out of the 240 or so, I think you said 140 of them were related to colored persons. And as the first generation Irish, my father was Irish, I was curious about the other, 140 or so And I'm sure that included Irish at the time, because when he came here, there was no need to apply, no Irish apply. It applied to Jews, lesbians, anybody they could think of. So nobody's been enforcing these covenants. And I was happy to see in another letter to the register that the registry, Hampshire Register of Deeds, had responded to the article in the paper and is willing to work with certain attorneys, because you can't just go change a deed. There's procedures, there's money, there's a policy you go through. And an institution, a banker, certainly can't go slicing and dicing up somebody's deed. It's not going to work that way. And I'm not quite certain why there's only a few streets that this register is willing to work with an attorney to eliminate these covenants. So I just wanted to pass along that the tone of all that, and maybe it was wrong in the paper, because I mean, things do get a little tweaked sometimes, but I think I like the lady's idea about education. Reparations is about education. And you talk to any migrant family coming here, whether it's Irish, Polish, or whatever, it's about education. And healthcare is the way to be right now for anybody. So if you can get your healthcare certifications in, you'll be able to charge anything to anybody around here and make a fortune and a great living and be able to afford to live in Northampton. So thank you for all of you volunteers, because I know you're volunteering to do all this, and I appreciate all of that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. We are at 20 minutes. So if it's possible to keep your comments moving, that would be great for our agenda, but otherwise we'll just let everyone go. So we have someone online. Can y'all read that person's name? It's a D. Dana, you're up next.
Hello, I'm just starting my video. There we go. Hello. So I'll be really brief. I read the report and it just seemed that the work wasn't done. I mean, a lot of work has been done, but no reparations have been made. So this is, my understanding is that there are folks on the committee who are willing to, or the commission, who are willing to continue working on it. And I just want to encourage people who are ready to continue with that work to keep going with the work, because at this point it looks like the work isn't done. And I know it's a hassle for folks, and I just want to say I support everybody who's done the work so far, and I support everybody who would want to continue with the work. And I would also agree with, I forget who it was who said that, is this a resources issue? Do you need more resources? Because if more resources are needed, I think that's something that needs to go to the mayor, needs to go to city council, like whatever needs to get done in order for there to actually be reparations being made beyond just the report of how many options there are, or how many things need to be repaired, right? So until there's an actual proposal that you could put before the mayor, that the mayor could put into action as is, I think the committee needs to continue its work, and I would support that work in any way that I can. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Let's go to Cynthia.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Swopis, and I'm a resident of Northampton. And I also served as the co-chair with Dan Kennedy on the Northampton Police Review Commission in 2020. That was formed after the murder of George Floyd. I want to thank the members of this commission on your dedication, your honesty, and your participation in one of the city's most important initiatives since we filed our report in 2021 that I know many of you have already read. I recommend that you take the time you need to do the work you started in the exploration of just and meaningful reparations for the first people and the people of color in our city. It's hard to do this work under the constraints of open meeting law and Robert's rules, but I promise you, you can do it. I know the sacrifices all of you have made to do this work, because it's hard work. And I remember the time it took us on the Police Review Commission to find its footings. It takes some time. I've been to your meetings, And when I was on the police commission, I want you to know we argued, we deliberated, we negotiated, and members of our commission left. Some in frustration and others with the process and others because family and work commitments were being compromised. Every one of our meetings were filled with numerous public comments in addition to being robustly attended. We had 3 committees that met regularly, and we had public forums on Zoom where we gave the public 7 minutes, not 2 or 3 minutes, to give their comments. On one Zoom, we had 150 attendees. This was rather normal. We were committed to hearing from as many segments of the community we could find to inform our recommendations. When we thought we needed more time, we were provided that time by the former mayor and the former city councilor. We need you to continue this work. It has been 5 years since the death of George Floyd, and diversity efforts in our country are being held hostage by people with the same ideology as slave owners. Your work is not done, and I assure you, you will know when it is done. I'm confident our mayor and our city council, our city, will support your extension and continued work. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Andrea Reber.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Reber. I'm a member of the former Northampton Reparations Committee that brought forth the resolution that formed this commission, and also the Interfaith Reparations Roundtable and the Racial Justice Team at the Unitarian Society. And I want to speak in support of the proposal to extend this commission for another year. Even though I haven't seen, or I've just seen, the draft of the final report, I think that the commission has done a great job based on my regular attendance at meetings and the contents of the preliminary report. What is missing from that report is any mention of direct payments to Black residents and eligibility guidelines for those. Given the restrictive covenants that are part of Northampton's history, and therefore the lack of opportunities for Black residents to build wealth via home ownership, I believe that they are owed compensation for these effects of structural racism in our city. Even though such payments are unlikely ever to be granted, they deserve to be mentioned in the final report. This is a respectful way to honor Black residents and have their city take responsibility for its history of racial injustice. Furthermore, one possibility for recompense would be to establish a fund to which city residents like me who wish to make redress could contribute for reparations purposes. This idea was proposed in a past meeting, and I don't know the status of it now. This approach is now being considered in the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. These possibilities warrant further exploration, and hence I support extending the commission for another year. I recognize that some commissioners might be unable to serve for another year for various reasons. Any vacancies could be filled by appointing new commissioners, ideally Black residents. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrea. John Berkowitz.
Hi, John Berkowitz, also a member of the original Northampton Reparations Committee. I'd like to make 2 points. First, I was very glad to read recently, as Dr. Shabazz pointed out, and I didn't know he was going to be here, that the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma announced it would make reparations for one of the most heinous injustices done to Black Americans since emancipation during the Civil War. That being an attack in 1921 by a white mob aided by nearby U.S. military forces on the prosperous Greenwood neighborhood known as Black Wall Street. It left at least 300 dead and a whole community destroyed. The current Black mayor, as Dr. Shabazz said, of Tulsa, said that reparations initiatives amounting to $105 million would be raised from private sources rather than taken out of city funds. Second, I appreciate the commission's dedicated work over nearly 2 years. Whether you decide to issue your final report and recommendations soon or wait until even more research is done, I strongly urge you, even in these challenging financial times for municipalities, to allocate significant city funds to pay for reparative initiatives, such as our neighbor Amherst has done, as well as Evanston, Illinois, and other communities around the country. Northampton's acknowledgement of and apology for historic harms done to its African American citizens over its nearly 400-year history are an important beginning. But like every other American city, north or south, our progress and prosperity was built on the unpaid and then unequally paid labor and suffering of Black people. Until our national government decides to make reparations, just like we did for the Japanese Americans we imprisoned during World War II, it's up to people and cities like us across the country to get the reparations ball rolling in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, John. Quaverly for Dan Kennedy.
Hi, everyone. I am the Ward 3 City Councilor. I am speaking on behalf of my ward when I say we are incredibly proud to have 3 commissioners from Ward 3 here, Emma Khan, Marcia, Renika. We are proud of your commitment, your conviction, your dignity, your love. We couldn't ask for better commissioners to represent Ward 3. So thank you very much. I'm going to read a letter from Dan Kennedy, who was Cindy's co-chair for the Policing Review Commission. It's a letter to you all. Dan Kennedy is a friend of color. He's a very sensitive, thoughtful man, a wonderful communicator, very dedicated to equity. Before I read it, I just want to say in closing, on behalf of Ward 3, we strongly support extending this work for a year. And furthermore, we strongly support anyone who feels like this commitment in terms of time, which I know well as a fellow official, is hard. If you have other things that you need to do, that's fine. If you can stay and do the work, that's great. And I just think it's a vulnerable point in time, this inflection point where you may consider ending this phase, as someone suggested, and starting a new phase. I think that's vulnerable. I think where you have a very good seed of people here willing to keep doing the work, and I've had a chance to speak with half of you, where you have that good seed of people willing to continue the work, I think your best bet is to keep this ball rolling. And thank you to another Ward 3 resident, Carolyn, who helped get this ball rolling. So, the words of Dan Kennedy, co-chair of the Policing Review Commission. Hello, commissioners. I'm writing because I know there's an important decision coming upon you to continue the work of the commission or to transition it. I'll cut to the chase. Please do not stop the important work you are doing. While serving on the Policing Review Commission, I learned quite a bit that I hope might help inform your decision. The biggest lesson I've learned when working for the city is that when you propose changes to the city in the form of your recommendations, you may think you're suggesting the start. In reality, you are suggesting the end, the maximum, where the city will be able to say, we've done it. And sometimes that happens before your recommendations are even fully realized. Your recommendations must be concrete and robust for there to even be a chance at having them implemented beyond the most superficial route possible, like renaming a street or getting an apology in writing, before they do the hard work. The other things I've learned is that the work you're establishing now takes a huge amount of effort and time. It takes far more than most of us realize when we start or apply to serve. The Policing Review Commission held over 70 meetings in less than 6 months, several of them exceeding 4 hours. It was a slog. It was draining. It often felt impossible. But there was community interest and support. In fact, it was only because of that community engagement that we could have accomplished what we did, and we still fell short. across many levels. We could not holistically look at policing in the entirety of Northampton's history and examine the current practices and find viable alternatives to suggest and get personal testimonies and review complaints and review every process, and the list goes on. Needless to say, we could only have done as much as we did because there was community buy-in from folks who showed up to every meeting and offered us avenues to explore and help. We had people who had experience running alternatives to policing in the community, people who ran world-renowned mental health alternatives, and people with lived experiences showing up, in addition to the expertise present on the commission itself. Your commission has a wealth of experience and wisdom to tap into. But 5 years out from George Floyd's death, it will take time to draw that out from the community. It takes a long time to establish buy-in and trust from members of marginalized communities to even gain contact with them. Why fill out another form or testify at a commission and relive the trauma in public if there's no promise of real change? I have asked myself that dozens of times. The work you need to engage in is slow work. Your work is similarly Herculean, and has been, in that it's supposed to encompass not just the present, but the past too. It's virtually impossible for any small group of people to wrestle with centuries of injustice that have led to the current moment, and then all the resulting harms as well, and come to meaningful conclusions and recommendations in such a short amount of time. You need to have community buy-in before you can make recommendations, and you can rely on them for support as you navigate it. For you to stop now before you have thoroughly explored the current racialized harms that Black and Brown people experience in Northampton would be a disservice to the great work you have already accomplished. Because if you can't point to something now and name it and have a strong recommendation to the city to rectify it, your work will be lost. I have seen it happen in Northampton and elsewhere. So finally, please give reparations the lengthy attention it deserves. And if you don't do it now, it might be decades or centuries before it gets engaged meaningfully again. If you don't have something hard and fast to present as a recommendation to make the national issues local, they will get lost. Make sure the recommendations you are proposing are what the Black people in Northampton want and need, and will materially improve their lives as it undoes the harm of racism within the city. In solidarity, Dan Kennedy.
All right. Thank you, Quaverly. All right. So we are going to move on to community engagement updates. Oh, we have a person who just came in who wants to make a comment. Okay. Oh, really? Did you raise your hand? Oh, okay. Okay. I just had my list.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just went on. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Leah Gregg. I live in Ward 3. I serve on the Episcopal Diocese Social Justice Commission. I'm asking that the committee please continue their important work and to find measurable, tangible ways of atoning for past and current racism in our community. I feel it's especially important to reach out in creative ways to those whose voices may not have yet been heard, especially members of the Black community. According to the Center for Public Integrity, the racial wealth gap currently stands at $164,000 nationwide. And of course, we don't know what exactly it is in Northampton, but I bet it might be even bigger than that. I'm grateful for the work the committee has done in excavating the role that many community institutions played in creating this gap, but I'm concerned that not enough people in our community have been made aware of this or engaged in this issue. And I think the suggestions in the report are all great, but by themselves, they will not help close this gap, most of them. So please take the necessary time to find measurable ways to engage the community of Northampton in this work of making tangible reparations to those harmed by racial discrimination and the legacy of slavery.
All right. Thank you. We have one final comment. You actually don't have to, you can go right here. Yep.
Sorry, I came at the last minute. My name is Raymond Paquette. I'm a teacher at the high school. I don't have a really organized group of thoughts, but I'll be quick. I'm struck by a couple of things, agreeing with Quaverly about this has to go on. This can't stop because otherwise it'll just be a thing that Northampton says we did this thing and it's done. So it has to go on. At the same time, I'm also struck by the enormous amount of unpaid labor by a lot of Black people so far, which is kind of what this is about. So I am of the opinion that one of the things that has to be asked for is money. We need a position. The city should have a position to make sure that this stuff not only happens, but gets expanded on and furthered and not swept away. You guys deserve to be paid for the work you're doing. You've done whatever work you do in the future, you should be paid for, right? We got to ask the city to put our money where our mouth is. I think I've said enough. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on our agenda to community engagement updates. Allison Wright is up first. Allison's up there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi,
okay?
hold on a second, Allison.
Yeah.
Just so folks know, Allison was asked to do a presentation on eligibility. And let us know why eligibility is so critical to being a part of the report. And so I'm going to turn it over to Allison. Allison, also, could you just give us a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, sure. And I do apologize for not being able to appear in person. I was in urgent care over the weekend and I have the flu and also a sinus infection. So I thought it was best to not be there in an enclosed space for a long period of time. So my name is Allison Wright, and I have been a resident of the city of Northampton since December 2021. I live in Ward 4. I'm also proud to say that I am a Black woman who graduated from Spelman College. And for those of you who don't know, it's a historically Black college for women located in Atlanta, Georgia. I also graduated from UC Hastings College of the Law, now known as SF Law, which is the same law school our first Black and Indian American Vice President of these United States of America, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, also graduated from as well. So I have been practicing law in the Commonwealth for the past 13 years, doing civil rights and criminal defense work. I actually started my career with GLBTQ legal advocates and defenders, also known as GLAD. GLAD is, I think, most famously known for winning marriage equality, the first state here in Massachusetts, and also helped win national marriage equality several years later when I was there at the firm. After that, I worked for the Committee for Public Counsel Services as a public defender. I worked in Hampden County, so I worked out of the Holyoke District Court, Springfield District Court, Chicopee, Westfield, Palmer. And then after that, I worked at 80 Acres as their racial justice staff attorney. 80 Acres was a Black-founded, Black liberation nonprofit organization that was doing great work in the area. And so I first want to thank the commission for allowing me to speak. And also I wanted to acknowledge again the tremendous amount of work this commission has really poured into this study. I was pleased to see, and I commented once before at a meeting, the inclusion of the history of the institution of slavery as it manifested in the city of Northampton in the draft final report, and how the wealth of prominent white families like that of John Edwards and Henry Watson were built on the backs of slaves. I also appreciated the express inclusion of recommendations from community members who continue to witness or to be harmed by the continued legacy of slavery through policing practices and discriminatory housing practices. However, I did notice in the final report that I did not see some of the community-based recommendations in the final recommendations of the commission, I think someone on the who provided a public comment already said this, but like the possibility of direct cash payments for Black residents of Northampton, or an explanation as to why that is not expressly included. It's a bit confusing because there's a section in the final report that talks about community input, and then there's a section that's recommendations, and that part of the input from the community, at least as it relates to direct cash payments, is not included in that recommendation section. So for me, it doesn't feel like it's an official recommendation from the commission. Whether or not, that is a legal possibility is something that can be, I think, looked at down the line, but it's just a recommendation at this point that I think needs to be expressly included from this commission. Additionally, I did see that the final draft of the report only defines Blackness in the context of quantifiable data to estimate the population of Black people who live in Northampton. However, I think the final report is silent as to who would be eligible to receive some of the individual reparations to atone for slavery and its legacy as it has manifested here in Northampton. So, for example, one of the recommendations that really stood out to me is to assist first-time Black homeowners with down payments and closing costs. And should this recommendation, or should this commission also recommend direct cash payments to Black residents, I think we need to have some eligibility criteria at least proposed with this final report. So this commission wisely, I think, looked to the guidance, and I'm so happy Dr. Shabazz is here, and the support of our neighbors in Amherst who completed a recommendation on reparations in the city of Amherst in 2023. And the final report submitted by the members of the Amherst African Heritage Assembly specifically included recommendations for eligibility criteria that is noticeably absent from this report, and again, I think needs to be included in there. Even Evanston, Illinois, which is the first city in the United States to formally enact government-based reparations efforts, limited their eligibility criteria to direct descendants of Black residents who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969. I did write some citations, and I sent them to Sage if the commission would like to look at, which I'm probably sure you have. I don't mean to presume that you haven't. The Amherst report, and also some articles and reports from Evanston, Illinois, talking about how they're identifying descendants of Black residents who lived in the city of Evanston. And I also believe the Evanston reparations are very tailored to the housing and the decreased population of Black residents in Evanston, which I think is kind of similar here to what we're seeing in Northampton. Additionally, I just want to talk about just a few more examples of criteria that people have used for reparation purposes. Commissioner Morris and I have had many conversations on this topic about defining Blackness, particularly, the social context of using African American. But as a lawyer, I'm looking more at the harm that this commission is seeking to redress, and that is the harm of slavery as it existed here in Northampton and the legacy that evolved from it. And I like to use the housing example because it's very concrete. And so a lot of what I see with other reparation efforts across the country are very specifically tailored to the harm that they're trying to redress. So, for example, in San Francisco, their reparation efforts, their possible criteria for reparations include Black people who lived in the city during a certain time period and descending from someone incarcerated for the failed war on drugs. So they're specifically looking at the criminal system and this country's alleged war on drugs, which ended up incarcerating at a massive rate people of African descent. So, things that Commissioner Morris and I talked about that I think needs to be fleshed out more with the commission, at least with discussions before including what the final eligibility criteria could look like. There is complexity and history of defining Blackness. Something that Commissioner Morris and I talked about extensively was the use of the one drop rule. Something that I personally oppose. It's a system that was created to uphold white supremacy, to uphold Jim Crow, segregation, and it's something that I would like to see we move away from using, at least in this context, when we're talking about eligibility criteria. But I do think there are some complexities around multiracial and biracial people, particularly, Blackness has looks a lot of different ways. But we have to recognize that sometimes the harm is going to be experienced differently for members of the Black community, or as I have proposed to Commissioner Morris, my eligibility wording was descendants of African slaves that existed in the United States of America, based on the color of our skin. And I think darker skinned individuals are more readily going to experience some of the legacies that we see still perpetuated from slavery, including policing, for example. And that's not to say that people of different skin colors don't, but I think we have to acknowledge the reality that darker skinned people, particularly anti-Blackness as it's perceived from skin color, experience as someone who is more readily read as Black than maybe a lighter skinned individual, are going to experience harms that maybe somebody who passes as biracial or maybe even white, even if they aren't just white, don't. I can think of many examples in my own life as someone who is of darker skin and has also been stopped by the police here in Massachusetts. And also when I was studying in law school in San Francisco many a times, and I'm also walking with people who actually are biracial but pass for white. I'm usually the one that gets targeted, not my friend who passes for white. So those are things that I think harms that need to be recognized and considered, perhaps when deciding the eligibility criteria. And I didn't have more time, unfortunately, because of my illness, to delve more into what other states have been doing. But it's something I'm happy to continue to follow up on in my individual capacity as a Black resident of Northampton, who also is invested in this issue, to help the commission come to some sort of eligibility guidelines to put in their recommendations. Again, my ultimate point is that I do think there needs to be eligibility criteria added to the recommendation. And I do think that the criteria written in the Amherst report is a good starting place, and something that should be looked at and modeled after.
So, Allison, one other quick question. We had talked about the one drop rule, and the legacy clearly of racism. But do you have, when we talked about this, we also talked about the fact that a lot of people don't understand some of the things that come up for Black people. It's not a common conversation about the issues that come up in terms of dark skin, light skin, all of those kinds of issues that stem way back to in-house slaves, slaves in the field, etc. So do you think we need to do some research on that as well?
I think there needs to be research about, I think, again, looking at the different models that have already been proposed by different cities or states about what the eligibility criteria is a good starting place. I think that if this commission decides that it wants to do more research in defining Blackness and to really make sure it's capturing the harm, the various forms and degrees of harm that all Black people experience. I do think that's something that the commission needs to have a conversation about. I don't know if I am really the best person to really to say that. I mean, my starting point as a researcher and as a lawyer is to look at what has already been done. And I do think there are already good examples out there that exist in Amherst and Evanston, Illinois, and even San Francisco with what they're trying to do, that this commission could follow and model after.
Last comment for everybody. When Alice and I started these conversations, I did find the case. It seems to be an issue when Black people are moving to be identified as white. The one drop rule still comes up and has not totally been struck down. So these issues are important because these cases come up within our legal system and they still are being defined, even though people don't want to acknowledge it, as if you have Black parentage of any type in your family, you are considered Black. So, and there's a lot of competing interests of how to define Black. We went back and forth around, should it be directly related to people who are descendants of slaves? So, as opposed to Africans that come to these shores for a variety of reasons, maybe immigration, or they came here to be teachers, whatever. But to define that with clarity, and then there's other issues that come up. So it's important to take the time to do this and not skip over these issues. So thank you, Allison, for being willing to do that research. And we do have your notes and we'll circulate it to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Sarah Weinberg.
I've asked Sarah Weinberg to come and testify as someone whose family has actually received reparations, so that there is somebody who can speak to how reparations impact people's whole system of family.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me. I want to say that it's my own family experience with reparations for the Holocaust that motivated me to join with some of the other founding members of the Reparations Committee of Northampton that brought forth the resolution. So my parents were both Holocaust survivors. I had no grandparents, lost aunts, uncles, and a second cousin who was 6 years old when she was taken. And even though the Holocaust happened way before I was born, well, actually not that far before, I carry the legacy of intergenerational trauma, as does my daughter. And I'm sure the generations that will follow her will as well. My parents were forced from their homes, suffering unimaginable trauma. They never found out what happened to many of their family members. Oppression affected them every day of their lives, and it affected me growing up. The German government did not give reparations willingly. They were forced to do it to gain legitimacy among the other European nations. And so the story of how my parents, of reparations in my own family, it carries with it some really difficult decisions that were made about who qualified and who didn't. My father did not receive reparations. He was from Poland. He ran away. It's a long and confusing story about what happened to him, but he ended up spending his time in Russia, in the Russian army. And when he came back, and he discovered that his entire family had been murdered in Auschwitz. He was not eligible for reparations because he wasn't in a concentration camp, even though I think the war it damaged him in ways that are incomprehensible. My father asked my mother to apply for reparations. They met after the war. My mother was in 3 different concentration camps. She was also from Poland, from Krakow. And she was in 3 different concentration camps, and lost her mother, never found out what happened to her mother, lost her sister, lost a lot of people in her family. And so when she tried to apply, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. She was asked to go through this whole interrogation and had to have an EEG, had to be interviewed by psychiatrists. And ultimately, they discovered that she wasn't damaged enough. And so she had to go through another trauma, another indignity to try to get reparations, which she did not get. The person in our family who qualified for reparations was my mother's older sister, my Aunt Clara. Clara was able to get reparations because one of the groups that qualified were people who had lost a spouse. And my aunt's husband died during the war of cholera, I believe, typhus. So every month, I know that my aunt got a check from the German government. And when my aunt died, she had no next of kin left. She had her son predeceased her, and they had no children. Her son and his wife had no children, and his wife, who was German and not Jewish, went back to Germany. And so my brother and I were the next of kin. And we inherited a substantial amount of money that enabled my daughter to go to NYU. It paid for her tuition and her room and board. And she took great pride in this. It meant something to her that people thought the suffering of our ancestors was great enough to warrant payments. And she said it motivated her to make something of her education. Reparations don't take away the trauma. The grief continues to impact even her generation. And as I said earlier, it will continue. But it recognizes, I think what's important about reparations is that they recognize the legitimacy of suffering that people have undergone for generations and generations. And it's not just a payment that says, okay, here, you got your money, all is forgiven. It will never all be forgiven, but it's a way of making some atonement. It allowed my daughter to do something with her life that she realized her grandparents weren't able to do, and her murdered ancestors before them weren't able to do. It was a message that said, you have been harmed irreparably, and we can't make it go away, but your suffering is legitimate, and your suffering is real. So I don't live in Northampton anymore. I live in East Hampton. But I just want to say it's been really interesting for me to listen to the discussion today. And I think it's really important that the Reparations Commission be allowed to continue be able and make the decision to continue its work because it makes a difference in one's psyche to know that somebody fought to do something. And that's it. Thank you.
With that,
All right, thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much. The idea of bringing forth folks that had actually suffered from the Holocaust and talk specifically about reparations was given to us by Carolyn Oppenheim, who sits on the community engagement learning group. And I've asked Carolyn just to say a few words about her family as well.
Is Carolyn here behind me?
Oh,
You know, you got.
I got you.
Well, that's like that might work. This might work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the other ones don't. Oh, over there, it was, I had to strain to hear people. I won't go in as much detail as Sarah, but just so you know, it's not a one-off thing. I grew up in an immigrant community in the Bronx in New York, in apartments. And I was born in 42. My first awareness of the world of people was probably 45, 46. That year and the subsequent next 3 or 4 years, Jews who survived the war were coming into this country from displaced persons camps. Displaced persons camps were like the Japanese camps here. Jews who survived were rounded up by the military and put in these camps. They couldn't just, in Germany, they couldn't go to their old house. People were living in them. They had to be in these camps. There's research on this by former soldiers. It was an outrage. So they came here, and my father was a social worker who spoke Yiddish, worked for like Hayes, and interviewed many of these people. And it was horrible. The Americans did not fight for them. In our family, we had people who survived and people who didn't. I had one aunt who'd been in a concentration camp, and something happened to her there. She could never have children. She was my mother's age. She's the one who got reparations. And nobody would tell me the truth, so I don't know if they did medical experiments on her. I just know that her infertility was a great source of tragedy for her. And I became like her child, and she raised me and taught me Yiddish, and she got reparations. And I associate reparations, but it didn't make her whole in any way. My Aunt Goldie was a broken woman, but a wonderful woman. So there were lots of people who did get reparations and lots of people who didn't because of the humiliating things that Sarah described. People of means and property tended to get reparations more because it's kind of like if you have insurance, and there's some harm is done to your house or your car, they do financial calculations of what it would have been worth. And so that's why you hear a lot of stories about rich people getting compensation for their paintings or their buildings. But the ordinary people who didn't have and didn't have records after they were in camps of any ownings. So that that's why I got on this committee 5 years ago, because I felt so strongly that, and I want to make a very fast plea for just second what everybody has said, that there has to be more work. And if there are people burned out on the commission, as I well understand they can be, let there be fresh troops. Let more people come in. It shouldn't be people are tired, we have to end. Let people step down who've done their share and let more people come, but let the work go on. This whole idea began in the wake of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, when we were all energized and our eyes were opened. And it took us a couple of years to find our footing and finally get an ordinance. And by that time, you know how America is, people were moving on. And so then this commission began, and there were problems. I won't go into them, but there were problems. For one, the city didn't pay for a staff person for about a year, and that hampered the commission a great deal. It should have come right away. So they've had, there's been problems, but you don't blame the commission for the problems. And now, as someone wisely said, we're suddenly in an area where the whole atmosphere is anti-DEI. And what a time to close down the commission. I think this is a beacon that this town still has these values. We have a lot that we need to know. And I won't repeat, everybody has said what needs to be said, but I just want, with my background and my energy, and I will do everything I can to help this commission keep going. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I want to just ask a quick question. Sage, do you know if someone's in this room afterwards? Okay, so we are on a tight schedule now. Those are our, I want to make a motion we have a recess for 10 minutes, which obviously, given time frame, I think that's a little too long. But I want to make a motion for maybe a recess now and to switch the order around so we can actually discuss the final report before we vote on extending the commission. And so my motion is to change the agenda, move the recess up for 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, stretch your legs to the bathroom. 5 minutes, that's fine with me. And then the second motion would be to move the vote to extend the commission or move up discussion of the final report and to switch the vote on the extending the commission and propose allocating remaining funds to the bottom. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, and so let's go through roll. William Newman.
No, there's supposed to be discussion, isn't
Oh, so there be discussion? Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, discussion. Anyone just want to discuss?
Yes. We tried to get this on the last agenda. So the discussion around the vote to extend. Also, several of the commissioners of color came together to specifically ask for this to be put on to the to extend the commission first. And so there's that, and so I'm going to ask that we don't change the order. So that would be my issue with what you're talking about. We can't just jump and change the order of the meeting because you want to get to the recommendation.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say about it? Any other discussion? Yep. No? We ready to vote? Yeah, move to a vote. Here we go. To switch the order. Okay. Yeah, Bill Newman. Yeah, this would give us 3 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute break now, and then move up the final report to that. So yes, okay. Felicia. Okay. Garrick.
Yes, in favor.
Okay. Marissa.
Yes.
Marcia.
No.
Usman Power Green. Yes. Renika.
No.
Jasmine.
I'd like a break. Yes.
Say the mayor.
Yes.
And Emakan.
Yes.
All right, Jeremy.
Yes.
Okay. So the motion passes for a 5 minute break and he's switching the order of discussion of the final report before voting to extend the commission. Let us reconvene. We will discuss the final report and the recommendations specifically. Last meeting, we were able to go through some of it. We read the apology letter, so we sort of been through that. This is the opportunity. You know, we have a little bit of a tight schedule, so we're going to try to keep things in order here. So if we could maybe, you know, keep keep it moving with our comments, that'll be great. But I want to open the floor to commissioners to discuss the final report and the recommendations that are listed in the final report. So who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yes, in the final recommendation, my main area that I wanted to concentrate on is housing. And my main proposal is housing. And I had set up, or was trying to set up the question of for first-time home buyers of people of color to help them. And according to the report so far, we have an assistance for first-time home buyers of people of color for of $25,000. My issue with that is when I first got my house in '97, that would have been a great amount of money. But because homes in Northampton keep increasing in value, that I figured to be eligible with the banks, it would be better if it was a 10% of whatever was necessary as a down payment for a home, as well as enough funds to cover the closing cost.
All right.
I don't,
So one
I don't
comment.
understand. What does that mean? Does that mean you want a change in here or?
Yes, I would like to change what's been proposed in the draft here. It says that there's an assist first-time Black homeowners with down payments of $25,000. I would like to change that to a percentage so that it's 10% of the asking price, and also to include the closing cost. In terms of eligibility, that would be strictly up to the banks to, you'd have to have a certain amount. They do costs, what's the debt to cost ratio that the banks include in factoring who's eligible for a loan.
Okay. Bill.
I actually agree on urgency, importance of this. I agree on the urgency and importance of this work going forward. And that's why I think in order to go forward with what we have said on this commission for almost 2 years, that it's really important that this report be filed and that it be emphasized when it's filed, as we have done in the preliminary report going back to last December, starting with the approval of this commission in August, September, October, November, and December, that this work needs to continue. And it needs to continue with an implementation, either a commission and or a committee of the city council in conjunction with the Northampton Human Rights Commission, which is what we have said. And we said it going back, and let me just refresh memory of those who may not recall. In the preliminary report, the first recommendation, the city should, among other things, and I'll just read it. The city should encourage, assist, chronicle, and publish information about ongoing reparations and create the infrastructure to facilitate further reparative actions. Goes on, the city should convene planning meetings for reparative efforts going forward as part of reparations efforts. The successor commission or committee to this commission should encourage and facilitate regular citywide convenings of religious and secular groups for discussion and planning about reparations. These efforts should include outreach to the entire community and the Black community, going back to last September, saying, yes, this is the study commission and further work will have to be done with implementation. Let me say, I think we could go on, we could study lots more. We could include lots more, but we have in this report 48 specific recommendations. It's not like there isn't specificity here. There are 48 or 49 in the preliminary report in 15 categories. And we have said there, and we've said since, that those will be included in this final report. In addition, to those specific recommendations about how to implement it. I'm saying it's urgent that it be done. I want to see reparations now. We go
Yep.
on with this commission. By the time we get through all the other processes in the city, we'll put reparations back a year in the city, in my opinion. Here's the other recommendation. Establish a city council reparations commission. We recommend that the city council create a standing city council reparations commission. The purpose of the CCRC, the City Council Reparations Commission, to shepherd and facilitate the numerous public efforts and public-private partnerships envisioned in this report. Conduct such hearings so hearings can go on, research can go on. This is not the end, this is the beginning. This is what this filing of the report will mean. Conduct those hearings and make such further recommendations to the council as the committee deems appropriate. Underscore the city council's commitment to reparations and help weave the ongoing reparative endeavors into the fabric of our community. In addition to the matters that will come before the CCRC, the City Council's Commission on Reparations, as a result of recommendations in this report, that committee should be empowered to review matters and consider proposals that reasonably might be considered to be encompassed within the rubric of reparatory efforts.
Okay.
So it goes on. By the way, there are more. It says the mayor has to include in her annual report to the city, the state of the city address, what has happened for reparative efforts in this last year. And the city mayor is called upon to issue a proclamation on Juneteenth of every year in support of that. And the city is called upon to endorse the state legislation to study reparations. And the city is called upon and for the city council to pass the resolutions endorsing the federal and state resolutions, laws on reparations. There is a demand here that the mayor, recommendation, initiate executive action so that departments in the city collect data to help inform the city about how persons of color now are in leadership and or have been denied leadership and or management positions. And that information should be set forth in the mayor's annual state of the city address. All of those efforts are things that are going to be in front of the council. It will be up to the council and the reparations, the implementation commission to make that happen. This happens at the beginning of the report and it happens at the end where it says this.
If I could interject.
Yeah, actually, hold on 1 second real quick. Sorry, Renika. Bill, let's just hold it for a second because I was a little long. Let's
Okay,
pass the
sorry.
mic. That's all right.
Sorry.
No, you don't apologize. Let's just pass the mic so others can have a chance to respond. So Renika, yes.
Okay, so in response to, I think it's actually rather paternalistic and hubristic of us to put forth these recommendations, having only talked to 5 Black residents of Northampton and say, this is what we recommend. It is very much like, here, children, this is what we think you should want. And we're going to say that we can say very easily that we're going to continue the work, but look at the policing report. How much work of that has continued? I'm going to keep going back to that. How much of that work is continued? We know when we're done here, everybody gets to wipe their hands and say, we're done. We have our report. We're going to implement it or not, and we're going to move on. And secondly, because I'm not going to take up too much time because I am cognizant of the fact that other people need to speak, I would like to point out that the UN actually states, the United Nations states that commemoration is not enough. Racism is entrenched in social structures, policies, and the realities of millions today, violating people's dignity and rights while fueling silent discrimination in health, housing, education, and daily life. It is high time we shook ourselves free, he said, calling for action. Commemoration is not enough. Commemorating Juneteenth, the proclamation, is not enough. Eliminating discrimination requires action. That includes countries and businesses delivering reparatory justice.
Okay, thank you. Jasmine and then Marcia. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I wrote a little something and thank you for your patience. Okay. So we are all super passionate about this. We wouldn't be here if we weren't passionate about it, if we didn't care. We are asking for justice. We are fighting for a seat at the table that is so often decided if our people live or die. We fight to make our roots in a system that is inherently corrupt so that we can build something that bears fruit for our children. Look at the world right now. For the sake of the record, which will live longer than all of us, and for the historians who will go through it 400 years in the future, let me say this: we live in troubling times. We all know it. Times that call for great spirit and courage just to get through the day. For my entire life, this country has been at war. It has always been about control. This past year, we've watched the ancestral homes of the people of Palestine reduced to ashes. We've seen with our own eyes the videos and footage of active genocide. We bear witness. We have all seen the rise of AI technology encouraging us to not think for ourselves and to let computers do it for us. We've seen our country divided through misinformation and propaganda. We've seen ICE agents come to our neighborhoods and towns and rip families apart. We've seen blood-stained grounds at El Salvador through Google Maps. We've seen pictures of the insides of internment camps that look hauntingly similar to the Holocaust concentration camps. We've watched the rise of neo-Nazis. This week, there are citizens in LA who have fought back against the extreme injustice. And we watched as the National Guard was deployed by the man who's supposed to lead our country. All these facts make reparations even more critical, make justice more critical, make giving our people a seat at the table by any means more critical. Even if it's only on a town level, town by town, we start to see justice. Are we asking for land back? Yes. What facilities does Northampton have to give? Are we asking for money? Yes, because our ancestors are the reason why your ancestors even had money. We want the seats at the table that rightfully belong to us. We want our children to get a seat at the table without the pain it takes to get there. We want justice. And that's why we're all here. This Reparations Commission was given the task to study racialized harms by the mayor and city council. We found them in every corner, some hidden behind a veil of allyship that looks an awful lot like inaction in the face of those harms. We found them tracing back hundreds of years, and we find them today. It's a privilege to sit behind a desk and read this report that we've tendered with so much pain. It's a privilege to sit and watch us argue or fight, have disagreements, and then write articles about it. It's a privilege to not have to fight for a world where your children can have the same opportunities as their white counterparts, whose ancestors are names on the streets that we walk down. Now let's talk about this. Some people want to continue this commission, the study commission, in hopes of getting more visibility and support, in hopes of finding more ways to rally community, in hopes of putting more information into the report and finding ways to quantify what reparations will be. And some of us are worried that if we don't act now, before the city elections, we'll need to start over from the beginning, that we'll lose the footing that we already have. Some of us want the Implementation Commission to be brought to the Northampton government and to begin effective immediately. Both are valid answers. So why not do both? Why not do both? That said, I want to make a motion to extend the study commission, but I also request that the Implementation Commission begin in tandem with that extension. These commissions are not paid. They require time and passion and hurt, but the city loses nothing by allowing both. It is our spirits that take the fall. And if we are willing to do that for the sake of the next generation, to see what will grow from the seeds of resistance that our ancestors left, then I want to see it. I make a motion for both to exist together.
Oh, you have one right there, Marshall.
Oh. So do we have to do something with the?
Right now, we are discussing the final report, but people decide to discuss other stuff too. Everyone gets their turn. Marcia, you're up.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to deal with a couple of things. One, last meeting, we sat and talked about a report. One, we did not have in front of us. Two, we had not had an opportunity to read beforehand. And three, if my understanding is correct, we violated open meeting law by not circulating that and putting it up on the website. Whether or not that is true, before we agree to accept recommendations, which we have not talked about, and excuse me, are you just gonna make comments while I'm speaking? You're doing that as the chair. So I'd appreciate it if you would stop that. So one thing I want to be very clear is, and I've used that when we talked about this, I brought the NCOBRA person to talk to us about the criteria from NCOBRA. We also looked at the criteria from the United Nations. Where is that criteria and how does it relate to these recommendations? 48 recommendations. It speaks to our unwillingness to prioritize. It speaks to our unwillingness to get specific. And we still have not acknowledged that we want to rush to agree on the recommendations at an end of a meeting where the public has not even gotten the document for more than 2 days. It is 53 pages with corrections, and it's 48 pages that was given to us. So before we try to agree to any recommendations, my understanding is that the public is supposed to get time to review it. We haven't even done that. This is what I mean, the constant rush to just get done. What is that about? So, and I will speak specifically to, I think it's always interesting, Bill, that you're the person pushing for us to finish. You're not even a person of color. You're not Black. And Renika put it best, 5 Black people have spoken specifically about what they want to see as reparations. And most of it is focused around the police. We have not spent any significant time discussing that.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. So a couple things just to respond, just for commissioner's sake. So the draft that was sent around was on, this draft that I'm looking at is May 29th. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that the draft was posted, correct, Sage, 48 hours before, available to everyone way before that. So just in case anyone in the audience wants to understand that, it's not true. Second, I want to talk about recommendation. This is on the towards the back, our final recommendations. We strongly recommend the creation of a reserve account for reparations. Right? If Northampton is to pursue reparative action, it must create a reserve account for reparations. A reserve account literally reserves money for a specific purpose. We recommend the reparations reserve account be funded by and through the city. The purpose of the reparations reserve account is to provide reliable, anticipatable funding amounts for reparative efforts. We recommend the account have the right and ability to receive and administer funds for private entities and individuals as well. This is much of what people ask for. The Commission is acutely aware of competing demands to city funds. Cognizant of this reality, the Commission recommends that annually 2.5% of the city's budget, but unexpected money, be designated for the reparation reserve account. Right? We cannot predict the amounts that annually will be achieved from this designation. In addition, we urge the mayor and city council and its budget committee to explore alternative and creative methods for funding and to report to the city in those efforts and considerations. In here, what I'm excited about is this specific statement and command to the and demand to the city council and the mayor, as well as allocating funds to support private efforts. The final report has in it provisions for funding and as we're supposed to be doing studying and making the demand that funds are made available specific for reparative purposes. And so I'm excited by that. I'm excited about the idea that nearly anything that anyone in this room, because I've talked to many of these different entities, the wonderful suggestions they have made it in the final report. I still am waiting for commissioners to write down new recommendations. So what we have are the recommendations that the commissioners gave us to include in the final report. So if commissioners have other suggestions outside of the ones that were written down and given to us, this is an opportunity to sort of bring them up despite what we have on the table. Let's let other commissioners join the conversation. Okay, so well, we have commissioners who haven't had a chance to speak yet, so let's pass the mic.
Sure. Just want to thank everyone for taking time to read all of these things. Since the time that first final draft came out, I've seen there's some proposed edits, and I think it has integrated some of the things that people were talking about. As you just said, Usman, there is now a solid commitment that was in the preliminary draft about starting a reserve funds and kind of how much we should put in it. I also just want to take note that from this first final draft, one of the things I was going to bring up was using funds for encouraging Black businesses. I'm thankful that that has been included here. I'm also thankful that in that section, we talk about looking at our surrounding communities, Springfield, for instance, looking at their the establishment of the Minority and Women's Business Enterprise Certification Office. I like that there in this draft is a little more robust talk about assisting first-time Black homeowners. So thank you for including that. Again, as there was talk about police reform, there is some things about that. And I just want to touch upon, because it stood out to me as well, the discussions about policing. It's something I have taken to heart since George Floyd's murder. And I've said this in city council meetings, but I personally dedicated myself to going to more meetings and interviewing every police recruit. And I will say that being inside of our police department has allowed me to see how much they have taken into account some of the recommendations they have been including in their questionings about the BCC, talking about how we can implement and work further together. They have also been making sure to, if a potential recruit does not fit the police department, they have been looking towards ways in which to further integrate. I know that there have been some difficulties with how you service calls, but it is something that I just want to say that there is movement on it. Not enough, but there is some movement happening for that. And I think that it's great that we have prioritized continued police reform in this. I also just want to state that I think that what Jasmine said is kind of how I was feeling, is that for me, there are two things happening. One is us discussing our recommendations. Part of that is because there is built into these recommendations continued efforts to have a robust, permanent body that is not just folks who are making recommendations. We are suggesting there is some way to both fund and, again, build infrastructure to do that. So I think it's really important to remember that. But I also want to say that, again, I've committed myself to a lot of this work. Pretty much what I do in my life now is go to work, go to meetings, and then combine all of them. And so I'm willing to do that. And I think that just moving forward, some of these recommendations does not mean that our work here needs to stop. In fact, I'd be willing to, as the council has and the mayor has to figure out what that next implementation is. Let's continue meeting. Let's keep having these discussions. And then just because we put forward some recommendations doesn't mean we can't discover others. And I know that's kind of off topic, but that's where I am now. And I'll let other people talk. There's some things I do want to say about this, but I've said enough.
Okay. Here's the situation. We have this room for 7 more minutes. Let's see what we can do to have, if people have more comments about this report, please go forward. Comments about the report?
I would just like to clarify that I wasn't talking about recommendations from us. I was talking about recommendations from the community.
Okay.
That's why there's no additional ones in there, because we haven't gotten more community member recommendations.
Okay. Yeah, Felicia, then Marcia.
So I also want to echo what Jasmine said in terms of the motion that she put out forward. I think that there is space for additional assessment and discovery, but we've done a lot of assessment and discovery already. We have over 48 recommendations, and I think we need to really think about sort of the planning and the operationalization and implementation
for me, I think that we do have a lot of body of work to work from. And while we can, I think it's important to hear from the community, we still can continue that effort in addition to moving forward with some of these recommendations.
Okay, Marcia.
I appreciate what Jasmine and Felicia are saying. But I think we should not be fooled as Black people, and people of color. We should not be fooled by whenever people are rushing us to get something done. I do not feel this rush. These things have been going on for hundreds of years. We tried to compress it into 2 years with a lot of people pushing their own agenda. I implore us to continue to do the research work, do the deeper level research work that the lawyer that Allison talked about. We have 48 recommendations. First of all, that's too many. 48 recommendations to me says we weren't willing to prioritize and have a real discussion about the ones that are really important to people, because Black people are not in the conversation. And no, you did not send out the report ahead. It did go out the day that we talked about it. The committee has not even had a chance to look at it. So I will say again, what is the rush?
Okay. I want to make a motion. Oh, yeah, Mercer.
I'm sorry, I'll be very brief.
Yep.
I'm prepared today to vote to pass these recommendations on to the city council and the mayor. I think that they are an excellent foundation for the ongoing work. And the most important thing that I think is that there are actionable items now that I know that council's ready to work on, if not already working on many of them, and would put forward and begin moving more. I want to speak briefly to the question of housing. I think of all the suggested forms of any kind of direct reparations, that might be the most tangible thing that we can get at. I don't think that we can make recommendations. That's a much more complicated, for all the reasons that Allison said. She had excellent remarks, speaking to some of the things that Bill and I have talked about in terms of legality, eligibility, and implementation. So I think that's something that deserves its own dedicated sort of working group going forward. And that is not something that I think we can get at within the context of this current iteration of the study group. So I would, I'm prepared to vote today to forward these to council. And in fact, I would move that we forward these to council and the
All
mayor.
right, we have a second.
What
With this,
happened
actually,
to-
hold on a second. With
What happened to her
with the
motion?
change.
Somebody else made a motion. See what
Yeah,
I'm
we're-
talking about?
But we're the motion to extend, Jasmine, is coming after we talk about this. So
Well,
Right.
then seconded.
it wasn't second and yeah.
So you can't entertain another motion, my understanding is?
I will say that I think we are going to hear on that motion and vote on it. I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Two-part motion.
Yeah.
So if we vote on this, it means that it affects this motion, and it still hasn't been dealt with the fact that there were changes that were needed to the report. That's not even getting addressed in here. I suggest
we
that
could
we
have-
come back for another meeting and then pick this up.
Go ahead,
We're
Garrett.
trying to jam this through. Just watch it,
Go ahead,
everybody.
Garrett.
This is the jam.
I didn't even speak yet, actually. I would, I feel that putting both of them together, it's hard to break them apart. Is that what you're trying? Like, there's two parts is what you're saying? Because once you put a motion in the second, there is discussion. So it's not like we just immediately go to vote. So I just want everyone to know. there's not
Yeah, which we
pushing anything forward. So I just want to get back to what Jasmine's motion was. And
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead. So Jasmine put a motion on the floor. I'll second Jasmine's motion to extend the commission discussion. Actually, people have already discussed their reasons for extending it, but do people have further discussion?
But it's both of them. Is that?
It's
So
it's both ends. So the
can you
motion
let
is, let me be
Jas-
clear. Yeah, you can be clear.
Thank you. So the motion that I'm putting forward is to push for the implementation commission to begin while the study commission can inform it continuously. Yes. I know I spoke that in a roundabout way. I'm sorry.
And that's been seconded already, so. So what I would say, I would suggest that we make it a recommendation to the mayor and the council. It just as a commission that is it is a product of council and mayor, so I would think it'd be best to phrase it as a recommendation.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah, discussion, go.
Excuse me, I'd like to, let's just be clear. Once again, we're being thrown into, let's make a recommendation to the mayor. We've got 48 recommendations. Now we're going to make it 49. When you give people this many recommendations, there's no priority. So I would suggest that we take the first part of the recommendation that this lady is putting forward, which is to extend the commission, and then we come back and then get clear what the second part of the motion is, which is then to build this implementation.
Okay.
But be very clear and break those two apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I clarify so I think it's an immediate recommendation to the mayor to say, let us create the implementation commission, and we are extending the study commission so that it works in tandem with, right?
That's the recommendation.
And that's for a change. Hold on.
Does the implementation commission require us to approve the report?
No.
Okay.
No, this is gonna.
I'd like
Yep.
to amend the recommendation, your motion. I agree with Jasmine's first part of the motion, but instead of making it a recommendation, we can just continue our work. So I recommend that we just continue our work and then we take the second part of the motion. We don't need to recommend to the mayor to continue our work.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Marissa, maybe finish the discussion here. Yep.
The reason I would say it does need to be a recommendation on its own is because there is a timeline that was approved by council as part of the joint. So that is why I'm saying this body can't just unilaterally decide to keep going in perpetuity.
Yeah, we can just recommend it
Yeah.
to the mayor and city
To
council.
the city council
Yeah.
and ask for an extension. So let's
Yeah.
be very clear. Let's be very clear about the language.
That
That the motion is to extend this commission
That's what it says.
and what was
That's what
we
it
go
says.
back and ask for an extension for a year. That
Yeah.
is the motion.
Correct.
And the second part would be about the implementation. Do you need to?
Yeah. Is everyone clear on what the motion is on the floor right now that's been seconded? Is to extend the commission, right? And recommend ultimately, because that's what we have to do, that we have an implementation commission that operate in tandem. Is there everyone's clear? All right, let's vote on that. Where's my?
Can you repeat it one more time, please?
Sure.
For absolute clarity.
Yes, the recommendation is to extend this commission and also to start an implementation commission that will be working at the same time as the study commission.
My understanding is the second part is a recommendation. Is that not correct?
Yeah. Both
So the
recommendations.
implementation part is a recommendation to the mayor.
Yeah.
But the actual extending of the commission for a year that keeps getting
Yeah.
dropped off is something that we're going to ask an extension for. Let's
We
just
would
be
need
clear.
to. Yeah, we would
Okay,
need to.
let's
That would be the
just be
expectation. Yeah? Okay. We have recommendation on the floor. Bill Newman. No. Felicia Lundquist. Garrick Perry. What'd you say? Oh,
There's other things that I feel like need to. There's no discussion.
we already discussed, didn't we?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, Jeremy Baker Paquette,
Yes.
Marissa Elkins,
Yes.
Marsha Morris.
I just want to be clear, it's not a recommendation. We're asking for an extension. And if that's what we're putting forward, then mine is yes.
Usman Peregrine, no. Renika.
Yes.
Jasmine. Emma Khan.
Yes.
All right, it passes. Oh, Jeremy. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
All right, so we've passed the recommendation to extend and also to go to the city council and essentially ask to have an implementation commission that operates while the extension is for a year or it'll.
And that's a
Go ahead.
recommendation.
Go ahead, Gary.
So my question is to ask for an implementation body for what? That, but I don't under that, and I think that there's
That's what we're
other
recommending
things
to
that
them.
would go with it, like that creation of reserve account. I'm just really confused as to what we're going to be implementing. And so again, I'm not trying to hold things off, but I really want this work to be done. And right now it feels like.
Did we get a final vote?
Yeah, pass.
Okay.
No.
I will move to vote on sending these recommendations.
Okay.
To
Is that the motion?
so we can implement them.
Okay, so you second that motion, discussion about sending these recommendations?
We just agreed that we're going to extend our work. And I think the work for us to do is to make sure that we put forward the most solid, specific recommendations, and we don't have to do it all at one time. We could do it slowly, folks. We could put forward the first 5 that we know for sure. We're not ready for 48 recommendations to go forward.
Okay.
And whoever is pressing for that, I don't understand the need to rush. What is that about?
Okay, so there's a motion, it's been seconded, it's been discussed. Any further discussion? Let's go to vote.
So wait a minute. Question. What is the purpose that recommendation to put forward? Because we only talked about the recommendation. We didn't talk about the time changes to go into what's going on with that.
We had an opportunity to discuss the report during the meeting.
Okay.
This is how we spend our time discussing the details of the report.
We never discussed the details of the final of the draft final, whatever. You just gave it to us last month. And it was asked, the request from Anthony, as I understood it, was to send in all of the changes. I sent in my changes. We never discussed it.
Okay,
There's
Emma Khan, go ahead.
Just so you
Okay.
know, this is just a vote to push to move forward some recommendations. We still have space to talk about the drafts and all the things you just addressed. And
We need to send forward the
so we have stuff to
recommendations.
implement.
Well, the thing is, you can disagree with it and vote no.
Well, no, we need to find out from the city if they agree to do this implementation simultaneously. That will give us another month to figure out and also get feedback from the community.
Okay, so. Yeah, Emma Khan, you have a comment or for our discussion?
It seems like we're discussing 2 things at the same time. One is the recommendations, and the other is a vote to extend the commission.
Which is that's already been passed. So we're just talking about this, voting on the recommendations to be able to send forth.
Right, so
Oh, let him.
I'm sorry, I didn't,
We
let
keep
me,
bringing in other things.
Okay, so what the motion that has been seconded is to submit these recommendations to the city council.
discussion.
There's some people, we just discussed it and the report.
Discussion.
And there's, okay, you have more, okay, yeah, go ahead.
The discussion of the report. I don't understand how we expect to put forward this. Listen to what we're saying as professionals. We want to forward the recommendations and we haven't even discussed the report changes. So we're just going to send forward recommendations without the final report. I'll go back to that. professionally, folks, everybody knows that's not how it's done. You
Okay.
finish your report, and then with your report, you submit your recommendations. Nobody just sends in recommendations without the final report when you're still revising. This is
Right.
ridiculous.
Right, thank you. Let's move to vote. Bill Newman. Yep. Yeah,
No,
Mr.
that's not
Lundquist.
what we just said.
yes, that's exactly the
No,
motion on the floor.
it was just the recommendation. See? Do you see how people just do the quick switch on you?
We have on the floor. Oh, go ahead.
I move forward because my confusion, we voted to recommend an implementation body. We have nothing to implement. If anything, I would like to move forward these recommendations, and so I'm moving forward with the recommendations. That is what I am doing, and that's what, yeah,
Right, so the recommendations without the report,
so.
that makes absolutely no sense.
Okay. Do you, so so you're just clarifying this for people. Felicia, right? That's why you asked Garrett to clarify?
I mean,
Okay, so-
with everything.
Right? Yeah, it was second already. So we've discussed it. So we call a vote. Yeah, Bill Newman. Bill Newman? Okay, this,
Like two things, the recommendation, or the report and the recommendations. And it doesn't sound like you all are in agreement about what you're voting on. And I'm sorry, I'm out of order, but I'm just saying, from outside here, I don't know what you're voting on.
yeah, go ahead, Bill. Go ahead. Yes, on the recommendations. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, that's what the recommendation on the floor. Okay, Bill Newman. Yes. Felicia Lundquist. Garrick. Marissa.
Yes.
Jeremy.
No.
Marcia. Wait, actually, are you counting these?
No.
Are you counting these? Okay. Usman Paravian, yes. Renika.
No.
Jasmine. Emikan.
Could you repeat what I'm voting on?
Garrick, go ahead. Say it, Garrick. Okay. It's the recommendations.
I vote yes. I vote yes.
All right, where we at? I lost track, Sage. 4 yes and I'm sorry. Okay.
Motion failed.
Jasmine, Emikan, Renika. I thought I went through everybody. Felicia, didn't I ask Felicia?
No.
You said no. Yeah.
Yeah, so now someone can.
Okay. So now we good? Okay, we got 4 yeses and how many nos? 5 no. Okay, so it did not pass. Okay, so good. You say it in the microphone? Just,
I would like to make a motion that we submit both the final report and recommendations with appropriate edits if needed to City Council and the Mayor of Northampton.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I have a point.
Okay, Renika.
I do believe that, I mean, we haven't even agreed on like the housing piece. So I think that it's premature to put it out, but I also definitely think when we submit this final report, we should have public comment and feedback and not just from this body, from the people that come there. It needs to be posted and we need to send out email blasts and we need to let people know that here's the report and email Sage or whoever to like, if you have any comments on it. So before we submit anything to City Council, I believe that piece is definitely missing.
Okay, other thoughts? Order in the court.
I would, especially if oh, sorry. I would agree with
You got
that.
it next, Marcia.
Especially making sure that all of the comments have to do with the recommendations that we're focused on, looking at the draft, making sure everyone has relevant information, I think would be really nice.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh.
Do you want to go or no?
Sorry, I'm living in migraine land.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Marcia. Some water?
Sorry, sister, that you are living in migraine land. I understand the desire to put in recommendations. I get it. But it does not make sense professionally to put in a report where changes were we were asked to do a specific thing. Send in all of our changes. I did that. Those changes have not even been discussed. We haven't even looked at the report and had a conversation about it. And the public, the Black public, has not looked at the report. So I say that we shouldn't send the report ahead, and I think we should prioritize the recommendations.
So my thing I'll say is that much of what we've been doing over the past, at least since January, is actually to engage the community and to educate them about the work we've been doing, as well as to get ideas from the community to inform the recommendations. The recommendations, as well as the report, reflect work from the community. I'm very proud of the connections and hard work the community's made to inform this. And so as a study commission, to study it, we have no, in my opinion, obligation to necessarily have the community vet this study. This is a study which we're eager to give you all. We'll print it and hand to all of you once we sort of come to the vote for it. So that's my opinion about it. And as I said, this has been a thoroughly community engaged effort. And once people actually read the report, they'll see themselves all up in it, and the work that they've done, not just in the last 5 years, but longer than that, to bring racial justice and deal with racial harm. So I'm excited about the report, and we have a motion on the floor. Second,
take
yeah,
umbrage.
you want to go?
Take umbrage at the fact that we don't have the community shouldn't vet this report. A report that is directly going to affect the Black community should be vetted by them. And it is, and this goes back to what I said at the beginning about the recommendations and the hubristic, paternalistic nature of us and the work that we have done.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. We've discussed it. Let's vote. Bill Newman, Felicia, Garrick,
Yes.
Jeremy,
No.
Marissa,
Yes.
Marcia,
No.
Usman, yes. Renika,
No.
Jasmine, Emikan.
Yeah.
Where we at?
Yes.
Okay, so what is passed is sending the report and the recommendations to the council with changes, that are not substantive in terms of the report, but that will make it better and stronger. There we go. So going to, yeah. Yeah.
We haven't
Do you have
discussed
suggestions?
the edits.
Oh, I said, is that a suggestion, Marcia?
I suggest that we discuss the edits and bring those to the committee, to the commission. We said we were going to look at the full report.
There you go.
Since we did pass the motion to recommend the implementation commission and keep the study commission going, is it not possible for the study commission to continue to work on the report with a few recommendations that are prioritized forward? I mean, can it be a fluid, continuous process with the city council? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't see why any person in this room even can continue to, the journey is just barely begun. I mean, there's a lot more work to be done. So anything that anyone in this room on this commission has that will make recommendations stronger or will reinforce them, I'm going to assume I hope the city council and mayor take them into consideration. So I don't see any contradiction. So
If we're extending, then we will be meeting to talk about the changes to the report. So we're still moving forward. We're putting forward this report. We're going to go ahead and send it forward. If you send it forward as it is, there's typos There's
Yeah.
grammatical problems. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up.
Exactly.
I mean, just professionally, just personally, professionally,
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
not send out a report looking like that, but if you
Yeah.
guys want to do it, that's
No.
fine.
As we said. And pass.
Was that it be submitted, subject to non-substantive editorial changes.
Yeah.
And
Yep,
to clean up
correct.
the typos, clean up the spelling.
No,
clean up the-
nobody said anything about substantive. See, you just changed.
No, I just said no substantive changes, but there
No,
will,
nobody said that. You said that.
Edits. I think that Bill puts it into
Sure.
greater perspective and context in terms of not changing sort of the substance of the.
But that's a different motion.
That's a different motion.
Yeah.
Substance versus, no, substance versus like form. So we're talking about two different things.
If anyone were, oh, sorry, Renika, go ahead.
No, like if we're gonna have a conversation and we said appropriate edits versus substantive. Substantive means actual changes. So for example, Marissa brought up the housing piece. That's a substantive change. Not not, so. I just wanna make sure. She
All right.
didn't say substantive. We said appropriate edits. Those are two different things.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I make a motion then that we need to be able to look at the document and keep changing it because there's a lot of historical error in there. There's a discussion that Jim Crow and race riots are the same thing. Not true. And so there's things that we have to clean up. Professionally, you don't let.
But
a
everyone agrees with you,
document.
Portia. I don't understand what you're.
So we need to do that work and
Yeah.
additional, and we should prioritize those recommendations and make some changes and add some things as well.
Okay. So, yep.
Can we talk about, we had one other item and that was the budget and what needs to be done, because we have
Now that
an
we've,
intern.
well, I just want to just say that now that we have passed to continue the study commission as well as the implementation commission. Yeah, when you all meet next, you guys can talk about that as much as you like.
No,
Right.
we actually can't because the budget year as what happened last year, we did not encumber those funds. So those funds just went back into the budget and we had to then re-ask for things. So there's money and things that we need to do before this commission, before we end today so that we can use the funds that are left.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is nothing budgetary that we could vote on and without being in violation of open meeting law.
What do you mean by that?
There is nothing, we cannot vote to spend money
Because you're not saying why.
because of open meeting law, because of what's on the agenda, and there's not a proposal for what that appropriation should be.
Yes, there is. It is on the agenda.
Doesn't
Is
say
it
what
not?
is.
It's right there,
Says
proposed
proposed.
allocation of remaining funds.
But what's the proposed allocation?
Right, that's my point, is what
Can
is the
you-
proposed allocation?
Can you bring it up, please?
No, we don't need to.
Given items, I didn't know that they would happen.
So can you please bring it up, please?
But
Well,
yeah,
But we can't go forward because they're not on the agenda.
They,
no.
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that just what the proposals are on the agenda for people to have previously prepared to consider.
Right, we looked at it the last meeting. Everybody who was here at last meeting, we went over that budget. Can you please bring that up so we can remind people?
I mean, my recollection is that you suggested that a trip to Birmingham.
That's Alabama.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So there were multiple things that were suggested. The trip was the least important. We talked about having the interns and actually paying them for their time to continue to do the research that we need for the report. That was the bulk of the allocation.
So Anthony has that budget. We went over this and we did not decide it. And that's what we were trying to do now, which is there's $17,000 left in the budget. we want to do that trip so we can tie together the information. There is a discussion about one person in Northampton that has a tie between Alabama and Northampton. We need to show a pattern. So that's part of the reason why we want to go to Alabama. And then we need an editor for this report. The report, truly, folks, I've done a lot of reports. This is not a report, it's a paper. A report needs more work. So we asked for an editor. We talked about it. And someone was even recommended, Usman. My understanding is you had that lady's information. And then to pay for the intern, which you all met, which is Melissa. So this is not new. We went over it last month. And so I'm bringing it back to finally get a vote on it.
Well, what's the details in terms of how much we'd be allocating though?
Can you bring up the form, the last month so that people can see what the allocations are, Anthony, please?
Well, I can say on the record, the quote for the editor, $2,500, as for a more normal budget for the research intern.
Just show the budget that we sent out. Just show what we had last month so people can't say they didn't see it, please.
While you pull that up, can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
We still can't, regardless of we see it or not, we still can't vote on it because it has not been posted. Am I correct in saying that?
I mean, my only issue with it would just be, people having time to look at the what you're like. We saw it on there, but writing it down and saying, look, this is what the trip would look like a budget. That would be my concern.
Yeah. And whether or not it's allowed under laws governing the spending of municipal funds and.
Absolutely. I talked to the person at the budget office at the beginning of this process to make sure I understood exactly what is allowed and what's not allowed. This is allowed. We had to go through a whole process. I had to find out if we could even get paid and blah, 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 blah. So, and all of that you're aware of, because Usman, I told you, I let you know.
Yeah, I'm not even
Anthony
against it.
spoke to the budget person, so we've been down that road. So Anthony, could you please bring up what was up last month, please?
I want to recommend tabling this because, and maybe perhaps meeting again sooner since people are interested in continuing the meeting. Because this seems like something that we could just have as a major agenda item, the allocation, and just talk about that.
If we don't do it, then we're in the same position we were last year. We lose the right to use the money. The people that work for the city know that. It's June 30th is the end of the fiscal year.
So should we meet next week? Is that a proposal for people to meet sooner? I'm looking around at everybody. Are people available to attempt to meet earlier? Well, I think we should.
I'd be willing to meet on it. I have to look at my schedule.
Okay,
and
so
I just feel a little rushed.
Let's table the conversation of allocation till next week, and we will figure out a time for people to meet. Is that? I'm looking around at everybody. Radhika, yeah, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so that deals with the issue, the concern you have, Marcia, about the 30th and everything like that. Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right. Can we end and then you announce it? No one will move. All right. There's a motion on the floor. Bill Newman, motion to adjourn. Felicia. Garrick?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Marissa?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Usman, yes. Radhika?
Yeah.
Jasmine?
Yeah.
And Emma Khan?
Yes.
All right, don't move. Quick announcement.
I just wanted to share that we have some anti-racist development cohort groups for leaders, both of color and for white leaders coming up. It's a dedicated space for learning, reflection, and support. And if you have any interest, you can contact me, or you can also look at Think Again Training and Consulting. There's two groups, again, for white folks and for folks of color. It's a great opportunity if you anticipate growing as an anti-racist leader within the context of this commission or outside your organizations.